Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Podcast, where we learn how to heal our hearts, find our voices, and step into our authentic power as the wild women that we were destined to be. I'm your host, Jessica Love. Settle into whichever way you like to listen to the Wild Wisdom Podcast, and let's get started. Feeling really called to speak about some specific astrological placements in your birth chart that I feel as if pop astrology sometimes abandons or just doesn't focus on. So if you have never looked at your astrological birth chart and you're interested in diving more deeply one-on-one, you can book a birth chart reading with me. You can go to my website, xo-jessicalove.com, to find the link. And I'll also link it below this podcast. But essentially, your astrological birth chart is a map of how the cosmos were laying the day, time, and place that you were born. So it's really special because each person's birth chart is uniquely specific to them. Even myself, I have an identical twin. We're 19 minutes apart. And while most of our planets are the same, we have different degrees in which those planets were in the zodiac signs that they were at the time that we were born. So we have different expressions of ourselves. And I wonder if that's why I got super into astrology when I got my first birth chart reading. I've always been into it since I was a kid, but why I really kind of was sold on it, because when you are an identical twin, like, you're kind of branded with your sibling for pretty much your whole life. People like kind of associate you with them and being just like them. But I always felt like, while we had maybe some similarities, like we have a very similar voice and we obviously look similar because we are twins, I always felt like we were also so different. And so getting a birth chart reading and learning about degree theory and astrology was so healing for me. Because it's like, well, yeah, that's why I'm very different as a 28-degree Pisces rising than she is as an 18-degree Pisces rising. You know what I mean? It's just a different vibe. And so it was really cool to get to learn about that. But essentially, if you've never looked at your birth chart and you want to follow along for today's podcast, my favorite way to look at my birth chart is with an app called Time Passages. So Time Passages is a free astrology app that you can download to your smartphone, and you can pull up your birth chart from there. I personally utilize Placidus astrology, or the Placidus system. So for this podcast, that's what you will be tuning into. But if you're interested in Hellenistic or whole sign astrology, there are many astrologers out there who utilize those systems, and you might have a different way of reading your chart. Once you pull up your chart, if you see this like big circle and there's all these different symbols and you're like, what the fuck does this mean? Don't worry about that, because there is a list view. So you can look at your different placements. Today, I want to talk about your North Node and your South Node in your birth chart. On Time Passages, you'll see your North Node listed. The South Node is essentially the sign that is opposite your North Node. So you can just do a quick Google search if you're brand new to astrology. What would my South Node be if my North Node is in Scorpio? And that's how you can find it out. Your North Node and your South Node directly deal with your destiny in this lifetime and your past life. Utilizing these two placements can be really supportive in your day-to-day life, because you can consciously choose to take actions that are relevant to your unique life path. Your North Node is your soul's destiny in this lifetime. It was what your soul chose to accomplish in the interlife phase in between lives for this lifetime. And it's also the area of our life that is probably the most uncomfortable, because it's not an energy that you're like familiar with. So for you, wherever your North Node is, like, these are the lessons that your soul is wanting to learn in this lifetime. South Node is the part of your life, or just your natural frequency. It's kind of what you were doing in your past life. Your South Node are things that come very naturally to you. And also, if you meet people who have their sun sign in your South Node, some people say that that might be somebody that you knew in a past life, which is really cool to think about if you're into past lives and reincarnation and soul tribe and all that. Essentially, your South Node shows your hidden gifts and it shows your natural talents. It's interesting, like, I was just giving my little brother advice for his midterms, and I was like, don't focus on the things that you know. It was for like his history test, and I was like, don't focus on the things you already know, focus on the things that you don't know. Because oftentimes when you're studying for a test, like, you just want to study the whole coursework, but you got to also trust that you know the things that you know and focus on learning the things you don't know. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't care about your South Node, or that you shouldn't like dabble in your South Node's energetic frequency. All I'm saying is, like, it's beneficial for you to really focus primarily on activating those North Node energies, because that is going to provide you the opportunity in this space to kind of integrate a little bit more and succeed in your soul's journey. So I will go over my interpretation of each North Node and South Node and how you can activate them to the best of your abilities in a second. Guys, I just had to go grab some nettle leaf tea for this because we're about to go on a journey. So buckle up. If your North Node is in Aries, that means your South Node is in Libra. So in your past life, you might have been like, your shadow side of Libra is like a people pleaser. So you might have been, or a hopeless romantic, like a toxic hopeless romantic, if you know what I mean, like a love addict. I'm sorry, it's just how it is. And so in your past life, like you might have kind of like really struggled with people pleasing and just kind of like putting this desire for harmony over your own personal needs and maybe even your career, things like that. And in this lifetime, you are meant to be in leadership. Your North Node is in Aries, and Aries is a very fiery fire sign. Aries is also the start of the zodiac. And so Aries energy has to do with starting things. It has to do with being in charge. It has to do with having a big vision and going for it. And it's not saying that, you don't care about what other people think. It's not saying that you just like purposely do things to hurt people, but you have your vision in a very boundaried way. And that's what you focus on. With your North Node being in Aries, my invitation for you is to explore the areas of your life where you abandon yourself to please others for the sake of harmony. Because the truth is, yeah, every once in a while, we need to just sacrifice ourselves for somebody else because they need us. And that's a thing. But if that's your pattern over and over and over again in your life, then you start living a life that doesn't feel like you, and you start resenting the people in it. With your North Node in Aries, it's like invitation to explore, what does it look like for me to just fully follow the calling of my heart and understand that not everybody's going to get it, and that's okay. It's a good opportunity to kind of ask yourself, like, in what ways am I abandoning myself to get the approval of others, or for this like false sense of harmony? Because when you abandon yourself for others, there's no opportunity for intimacy. There's no opportunity for connection. So you're not actually like connecting with them. Those relationships end up being kind of like superficial, and you are just missing out. Next, we have North Node in Taurus, South Node in Scorpio. So if your North Node is in Taurus, that means your South Node is in Scorpio. South Node in Scorpio. Ooh, you could have had a very unique past life. I always like to say, I feel like Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, which has to do with like the taboo. But what is taboo to me might not be what is taboo to you. And like what is normal to me might not be what is normal to you. You might have had a subjectively taboo life. You might have had subjectively taboo passions. Scorpio energy was the taboo, and also finances. So you might have also been like an accountant or something like that. The way that I would interpret South Node in Scorpio is, in a past life, you might have been a healer. You could have been a death doula. You could have been a shaman, a priest. You could have been a sex worker. You could have been a philosopher. You did things, I'm hearing lawyer, you did things that were considered taboo. And Scorpio is very deep, and it's in the underworld, and it's in like the depths of the ocean and things like that. And so with your North Node being in Taurus, Taurus is a very grounded sign. Okay. Taurus is an earth sign. Taurus has to do with our material possessions, our home. Tauruses are very sensual in the sense of like they're very here in their bodies. So when I think of Taurus energy, I think of like a nice, like dimly lit room. I think about like nice fluffy rugs and like little things like this. I think about massages and incense and chocolate and like these things that activate your senses. With your North Node being in Taurus, it would benefit you to try to get out of the subconscious, try to get out of the underworld. There are so many prominent psychologists today and also in our history that had prominent Gemini and Scorpio placements, because these placements have a lot to do with our subconscious mind and like the underworld and our psyche. Okay. Sometimes it's good to just get out of the underworld. Okay. Get out of your subconscious mind, get out of your psyche, and get into your body, get into the things that are happening in this physical plane. getting a massage or becoming a massage therapist. Exercise. Make sure you're eating and nourishing your bodies. Guys, Taurus placements always are either A, the best cooks, or B, they're not good cooks, but they just like have the best food rec. So I always love getting food recommendations from people with prominent Taurus placements. But yeah, so essentially, tea is so grounding. So this, like, if your North Node is in Taurus, like me stopping the astrology podcast to get a cup of nettle tea might resonate with you. Another thing I'm feeling intuitively called to share, and like what I feel like this interpretation could also mean, is there's a need to work on regulating your nervous system in this lifetime. You might have had some painful experiences in your childhood. Some people, this is only for a small group of people, but you might have had some negative experiences in your childhood or in your early adulthood that made you disassociate or leave your body. And so part of your journey is going to be coming back into your body, working with the earth. So like gardening is a great thing for North Node and Taurus. Interior design is a great thing for North Node and Taurus. Working with things in like our 3D reality will be very nourishing and supportive for you. And it will help you get out of your head while also staying into your body. So next up, we have North Node Gemini, South Node Sagittarius. So South Node Sagittarius, in your past life, if you have your South Node in Sagittarius, you might have been like a wandering sage. So you might have done a lot of traveling, exploring. You might have been really interested in philosophy or healing arts, or you could have been like a flight attendant or something like that, because it does real travel. You might have been a professor. I always feel like Sagittarius energy is like the nutty professor, but I mean that in a good way. It's like super genius, super smart, but alternative. Like you always think about that college professor that you had that was just kind of like different, but super cool. And they would like storm through. I had a couple of college professors like storm through the room like 2 minutes before class started with like their cool colored scarf or something like that. And they like throw off the scarf and like throw all their books down. Like that's the vibe. So that's what you were doing in your past life. Sagittarius can be a really outgoing sign, but they can also be kind of like the outgoing loner type. They don't necessarily fit in with like a specific group of people. And so in this lifetime, with your North Node being in Gemini, Gemini is all about communication, community, and connection. And it also has to do with public persona. Geminis are ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of communication. So it also has to do with mass communication, journalism, things like that, social media. And so essentially in this lifetime, my question for you is like, how can you utilize that wisdom that you really have? Because you really have a deep wisdom and like a really special way of seeing the world with your South Node in Sagittarius. How can you utilize that to connect, to express? North Node and Gemini, y'all would be great spiritual social media content creators. Be great professors who focus on creating communities. So instead of like saying your past life, you had kind of like a top-down approach to education, this would be a more like circular or matriarchal approach to education. So like I could see you hosting circles and like sitting in circular rooms when you teach. Things like that could be really supportive. And just understand that there's always going to be a natural desire to kind of escape, to flee, and to be alone. And like, what does it look like to find a way to feel free in community, to feel free in relationships? In tarot, the Gemini sign has 2 different cards associated with it. It has the Magician and also the Lovers. And so I want you to think about the Lovers here. How can you more deeply be in relationship with another? It doesn't have to just be with your romantic partner. And how can you allow yourself to experience the intimacy that connection can bring? Well, if your North Node is in Cancer, that means that your South Node is in Capricorn. In your past life, you might have been like a CEO. You might have been a CEO of a company, or if your most recent life was like before, CEO times or something like that, you could have been like the head of a community, probably a leader in some kind. Capricorn energy is like very focused on the physical and like what we can see, the tangible, which is why they tend to be very successful in business. Capricorn energy is also very traditional, and to me, it resembles masculine component to a nuclear family. So I like to look at Cancer and Capricorn as like the stereotypical mom and dad. Cancer is like the stereotypical feminine energy in a nuclear family, And then Capricorn is like the stereotypical masculine energy in a nuclear family. You kind of had that, like, I also think of Capricorn energy as big daddy energy. Capricorn, Leo, and Scorpio, I look at them all as big daddies in different ways. And so think about Capricorn energy as like big daddy on the earth plane, big daddy when it comes to money, big daddy when it comes to like furniture, like physical, like woodworking, like things like that. Capricorns can also be very cerebral. Like they can be really focused on what makes logical sense. They move kind of more slowly. In tarot, one card that resembles Capricorn energy or earth energy is the suit of pentacles. I like to think about the Knight of Pentacles in this analogy where it's like the Knight of Pentacles surveys all of their options before they make a move. And sometimes that means that they move more slowly. But what Capricorns do and why Capricorns are so important in our society is they create the structures that we all play on. So think about like a Capricorn South Node is like building a playground that lasts for generations and generations to come. However, what does it look like with your North Node being in Cancer? What does it look like to lean into your emotional and intuitive and cyclical, because Cancer is ruled by the moon, sides as well? Like, what does that look like to let yourself play in the realm of not knowing, but listening? Not always having an answer to every question, but following the nuances of your heart and following those things that might feel like little nudges from your intuition that are actually guiding you on your path. You know, if you think about Capricorn being like the earthiest earth sign you could think of, Cancer is a water sign. So it's watery and emotional and sensitive. And that might be uncomfortable for you. I'm just gonna put it out there. That might be uncomfortable for you because in your past life, you had to operate with your mind. You had to operate with things that like made logical sense. But in this life, your soul is asking you to play in the realm of not knowing, to play in the realm of your emotional body and making connections from your intuition. Cancer is also ruled by the moon, which is a cyclical sign. So you might notice that throughout the month, you might have like 4 different vibes that you move through, and that's okay. Allow yourself to play in the realm of, again, being in the unknown and understanding that you might not always have like a logical reason for things, and that's okay. If your North Node is in Leo, that means that your South Node is in Aquarius. So in your past life, you might have been kind of like an intellectual martyr of sorts. Aquariuses can be kind of like extroverted introverts. So you might have had like a very rich inner world. And because of that, sometimes you might have put yourself in positions where you kind of want to isolate and be alone because you had so much genius. And what can happen with Aquarius energy is like Aquariuses are so focused on like healing the collective and solving problems and being innovative, like in their communities and in the world around them, that sometimes it can be hard to like formulate really deep bonds in their personal life. They can come across as detached to others. They don't mean to be detached, but they're just focused on like solving humanity's problems. And so sometimes that can lead them to kind of like detach. When I look at this placement, I think it's interesting because something that Leo and Aquarius have in common is they are both loyal signs. They might take some time to fall in love and create community and create relationships, but when they do, like they're for life. Like they kind of like mate for life. They also look at like their projects and like the things that happen in their world in the same way. So in your past life, you might have been like a nutty professor, I guess, but like an Albert Einstein kind of person, like coming up with these genius inventions to solve humanity's problems. And in this life, your North Node being in Leo, like Leo is ruled by the 5th house, which rules celebrities and actors and actresses and also children. And so it's like in this lifetime, you're meant to play. You're meant to play and be vibrant and expressive and fun and like kind of like utilize your inner child like in your day-to-day life. North Node in Leo is all about authentic self-expression. In your past life, you might have some wounding around like showing up as you are. And it doesn't come naturally to you because there's so much like societal conditioning. But with your North Node in Leo, like it's a part of your soul's journey to just like be you, like be wildly you and understand that like you have a unique soul and a unique mission in this life. And you might also become famous. With your North Node being in Leo, like cameras are drawn to you, people are drawn to you. If you're looking for career tips, like picking something that puts you in the spotlight or helps, or picking a career where you work with children could be very beneficial for you because you're just natural. Like you're naturally in the spotlight and people like to see you there. So like, why not be there? And lastly, like soulfully, your lesson is letting people see you. Like let people see you, let yourself bond with others. You're worthy of that. If your North Node is in Virgo, nice to meet you. If your North Node is in Virgo, that means your South Node is in Pisces. I know this energy very well. This is my own natal placement. And what I can say is in our past life, we were also wandering sages, but it was more in the sense of like being healers. And we could have also been martyrs. I got a psychic reading done where she utilized astrology and numerology. And she said, in my past life, I was working in insane asylums in a war-torn country, and I was doing some really deep healing work with people in there. And I was essentially killed for the work that I was doing spiritually, which is like so wild because if you know anything about me, like I do have some really intense witch wounding, and we can talk about it on another podcast. In this lifetime, North Node in Virgo, your purpose is to cultivate structures, routines, and habits, because Virgo is the 6th house, which has to do with those types of things. And Virgo is also ruled by Mercury, which is the planet of communication. So also maintaining some sort of way, some sort of channel to communicate with the masses about the things that you learned spiritually in your past life. In your past life, with your South Node being in Pisces, that means you're a very old soul and you had a very spiritual past life and a very rich past life spiritually. And so in this life, you're meant to create structures to be able to educate people and inform them about the things that you learned. Another great career for a North Node in Virgo would be like nursing or being a doctor, or a physical, like personal trainer or a nutritionist, like having some sort of career that has to deal with the body. And with your North Node being in Virgo, like there's going to be a tendency to also kind of be in your head. And then your South Node in Pisces wants to be like in the metaphysical, spiritual world. And so part of your journey is going to be kind of coming back into your body. So really having a consistent exercise routine, having a healthy diet, things like that would be really supportive for you on your journey, because the more routine that you create, the more structures that you create, the more your Piscean spiritual knowledge can actually express itself in the world. Here today with a different setup, trying something new. Y'all will have to let me know which setup you like best, and a sugar-free energy drink, which this is not an advertisement for, but it's just kind of been one of those days. My daughter was up all night and she has been having just a lot of trouble sleeping. And, side note, I'm really calling in like more mom friends who love being moms and also can like take time to vent. I mean, don't get me wrong, like becoming a mother has been literally the best decision I've ever made in my life. And also like there are some days where it's freaking hard as fuck. So here we are drinking some chemicals and some stevia that I'm sure I'm probably not supposed to have. My North Node in Virgo can just chill and calm down and embrace that. If your North Node is in Libra, that would mean your South Node is in Aries. When I meditate on South Node and Aries energy, the vibe I'm getting is like boss babe, CEO. And remember, like every sign has shadow aspects to it and light aspects to it. So light aspects to South Node in Aries is you were a really natural leader. You were really innovative and inspiring. You managed teams well, and you were a visionary. Shadow side to South Node in Aries is being a little selfish, being a little impatient. I resonate with that a lot, having Saturn in Aries, which could also have some of the same shadowy qualities, is like you can just be kind of like a little impatient. And sometimes with South Node in Aries, you might have been in situations where you were kind of like in this my way or the highway vibe. This lifetime, with your North Node being in Libra, North Node in Libra, your path in this life is to learn balance, harmony, community, and connection. So whereas Aries shadow quality could be like me first, Libra's shadow quality is actually like me last, people pleasing. And so the balance between the two is compassionate leadership and more of like a matriarchal circular approach to leadership versus like a patriarchal top-down approach to leadership. So you still are meant to be in a leadership position because in your South Node, in your past life, like you had a lot of leadership experience. But in this life, you're learning like, how can I make it juicy? How can I make it friendly? How can I make my leadership in the ways that I show up in the world create more beauty and harmony in my environment and in the world around me? North Node in Libra, you guys might also have a tendency towards justice in working in the justice system, or also just advocating for the rights of others, as Libra, the astrological sign, is connected to the tarot card Justice. And so in this life, the goal is working away from self towards other, but then having that balance where you're not abandoning yourself for others, because compromise doesn't mean that you're abandoning yourself for everyone else. It just means that you're meeting people halfway. You give a little and you sacrifice a little. They give a little and you sacrifice a little. And that can be the beauty in the ways that you're showing up. Libra placements, I always say, create harmony in the world, and there's through two ways, and they create beauty in the world through two ways. The first path is through art and music and beauty, like being models and interior design and like creating things that are physically beautiful. And the second path is through dismantling the systems that aren't, through fighting for people's rights and to create a better world, kind of in a more structural way. So both pathways value beauty and they value harmony and they value making the world a beautiful place. One is through the destruction of what I would say is ugly, and the other one is through creating beauty, just kind of like out of their own consciousness. Career-wise or business-wise, if your North Node is in Libra, you would be a wonderful artist. You could be a wonderful speaker, a wonderful dancer, interior designer, somebody in the fashion industry, something like that, a photographer or a model, and that graphic designer. I have a lot of ideas. And then you could also be following that other path, which is like a lawyer, a judge, a journalist, an activist, a community organizer, a grassroots organizer, or nonprofit founder, something like that. If your North Node is in Scorpio, that means your South Node is in Taurus. So remember how I said Taurus placements are kind of like of this world and Scorpio placements are kind of like of the underworld or of the subconscious? That's kind of where we are again in this situation. And so in your past life, with your South Node being in Taurus, I'm thinking about like the historical Buddha right now and how his story is so beautiful. There's a documentary on PBS if you want to watch it. I think it's gorgeous. And basically, you know, he went through this path of when he was born, like he was born into this really wealthy royal family. He had everything handed to him. Like he never knew what it felt like to need anything, and he just had everything. And there's this beautiful story of him growing up this way, and he ends up with this beautiful wife, and they're like making love on this rooftop, and they fall off of the rooftop and somehow land in this like garden bed of flowers that like help him come home and like peacefully, and he like falls so peacefully. And one day he's like, you know, Dad, like I want to see what's going on in the world, like I've never left the castle. And so he ends up going into the village and he sees just how much people are suffering. He sees just how much pain that other people in the world are going through. And he is like, I'm going to completely abandon this lush life that I've had, this bougie life I've had, and I'm going to actually go complete 180, and I'm going to live a life of suffering and pain and like purposely suffering and purposely creating pain. So, you know, he left his wife, he left his house, he left his family, he left everything that he owned. And he kind of was in this energy of like forcing himself to suffer. So like he wouldn't eat, he starved himself. He would walk on needles, or he would like sleep on a bed of needles, like out in the cold, and walk barefoot in these roads that were really rough and things like that. And so through that process, he literally almost killed himself. And he somehow like mustered up the strength to go sit under this tree. And he sat under the tree and he meditated, and he learned from spirit or God or the universe the story of his mother and how his mother went through immense suffering to create him. And then she passed away and he was born. And he just had this very like metaphysical experience under this tree. So he placed 2 fingers up towards the sky, towards the heavens, and then 2 fingers down towards the earth, the ground, Mother Gaia, Mother Earth. And in that moment, he achieved what is called enlightenment in the Buddhist path. And that was through the middle way and the middle path. And so the middle path, which is a terminology in Buddhist philosophy, the Buddhist religion, is that there is no need for extremes, right? The way is like through temperament, it's through contentment, it's through following the middle path. And that is what I feel like embodies this particular nodal combination, because the North Node, think about South Node in Taurus, in my personal view, is like connected to that first part of our story. It's like the overindulgence is the shadow side of that, right? And the kind of too much connection to the material and the body. It also kind of reminds me of Kapha dosha if you're into Ayurveda and if that resonates with you. And then the other extreme is like too much spirit, too much connection to the suffering and like the underworld and the subconscious and the psyche. And so in this lifetime, you're learning the balance. You're learning what is your own middle path. I did a reading on a client once and I said, oh my gosh, your North Node is a Scorpio. That means you're here to fuck shit up. What I mean by that is in the best way is like Scorpio North Node, like you guys have a really big mission in this lifetime and you're meant to change things. You're meant to really make us all question things, like these deep, soulful life questions. And you can't do that if you're too lost in your spiritual sauce, and you can't do that if you're too connected to the material and too concerned with the material. Because if you're too concerned with the material world, then you won't take those risks or those steps into like fully embracing that woo that you have. That's like a really powerful gift that only you have. Career-wise, you would be such a great spiritual healer, spiritual teacher, somebody who works with the taboo. You could be a great psychologist, counselor, like shamanic traditions or things that, I mean, I'm not even saying that those things are taboo, but things that society claims are taboo that have to do with kind of making the unconscious conscious. That could be a beautiful gift. Also, wonderful artists, things like that. If your North Node is in Sagittarius, that means your South Node is in Gemini. And what a chatty placement. I love this placement. So South Node in Gemini, you might have like been a very prominent like journalist or writer or a speaker, psychologist, something of the like, a scientist even, because Geminis are super, super genius, smart, and like, not to toot my own horn, I'm a Gemini sun, but but Gemini South Node, it's like you guys are super genius, smart, but you guys can kind of get in your heads a lot. And in your past life, like that might have been a challenge for you, is like getting out of your head into your body, and also like getting out of this energy of isolation and into community and expansion, and like switching up your routine. And with North Node and Sagittarius, this is like your soul wants to learn expansion. Your soul wants to learn community. While Gemini seeks to know through learning, through like textbooks and studying and like more of that cerebral knowledge, Sagittarius seeks to learn through wisdom and experience. Both are necessary. Both are required. However, there are different ways, like both this nodal placement, you really value learning, but there's a different way that you're learning to learn. And so in your past life, there was a lot of studying and mastering through facts. In this life, there's a lot of studying and mastering through experience. And so the only way that you can have more life experience and gain that wisdom is through taking risks. In this lifetime, your homework that I'm assigning you in our cosmic school of life is to go out there and take risks. Travel, explore, expand your horizons beyond what you can see in your physical reality and like what you feel like is true or what you know is to be true based off of what you've learned in school or what you've learned in a textbook. I know some people like totally denounce that way of education. I think both are valuable, but you're just learning a different way in this life. Careers for you would be a spiritual teacher, a healer of some kind, a professor, a travel blogger, a flight attendant, or a pilot, somebody who can travel all over the world intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally, and also physically. People who can like expand our horizons, maybe like a business coach or a business mentor. And Sagittarius, Sag placements definitely can be like the boss. They can be the CEO, but they need a team under them. Like you guys need a team under you. Being a solopreneur as a Sagittarius can be really challenging because you guys are so expansive, and it's important to be able to stay in the visionary role because you guys are really great visionaries and creatives. So you want somebody working under you to help with like the technical stuff. If your North Node is in Capricorn, that means your South Node is in Cancer. So with your South Node in Cancer in your past life, you were probably a very nurturing, emotional, creative, artistic person. The shadow side is you might have overextended yourself towards others and let your emotions get in the way of you being able to see things clearly. So you might have made some like emotional choices that just put you in situations that were a little tough or risky. You might have also been a mother in your past life, because I do feel like Cancer rules the archetype of the mother. In this lifetime, with your North Node being in Capricorn, you're meant to really be more in this physical world. You would be a wonderful CEO, a wonderful boss, or an entrepreneur, but you're meant to kind of like utilize things that are in your physical reality for good. The shadow side of Capricorn can be a little bossy and a little materialistic. And so you want to be careful of your motives, but you also have the potential to be very financially successful and physically successful in this lifetime. Your soul wants to learn dedication through consistency, through hard work, and also through tradition, because Capricorn and Cancers are very traditional signs. Now, what is tradition to you? To me, like traditional doesn't mean conservative. It just means like honoring a set of values that you have and that you established maybe with your family, because North Node and Capricorn does love having a family and being the head of a household. So it's like maybe you and your family, you set your own like list of values and like your own value system. And then being traditional is just kind of like following the traditions of those values. Career-wise, again, like I said, being a boss, CEO, being a consultant, so like finding something that you are passionate about, become an expert in it, and you can consult people in it. If your North Node is in Aquarius, that means your South Node is in Leo. So in your past life, Leo energy to me just gives Marilyn Monroe. Like you were probably in the spotlight. You might have been like a singer or a dancer or like doing something on stage. And you could have been like a king or a queen or like somebody in royalty too. So like that's cool, amazing. But the shadow side of Leos is like they can be kind of overly focused on themselves. And so in this lifetime, North Node in Aquarius is all about the collective vision and innovation. So like innovation, technology, and the collective vision, humanitarianism. North Node in Aquarius asks you to ask the challenging questions that other people are kind of scared to ask about the structures in our world, about the systems in our world, and like kind of being that empowered activist energy. Aquarius energy is also very innovative, and also you might do very well on social media or things that are like innovative in their nature. I feel like social media has to be in Aquarius just because of the vibes of like being able to connect, because Aquarians are very community focused, like being able to connect with many people at once while also like having some sort of like collective good, but also doing something innovative like being online. And so in this lifetime, like you guys are kind of here to really create some positive change. You're also in the age of Aquarius. And so this particular timeline era that we are in right now is really meant to activate you specifically, to rise into your leadership power and to hold space for us with your innovative and creative ideas. So some careers or businesses that I think a North Node in Aquarius would succeed in is technology, science, humanitarianism, personal development. And yeah, you could dabble in the healing arts, but it might just be in a different way because you guys are so innovative. So the way that you would dabble into the healing arts is going to be in a way that isn't super mainstream yet. If you have like something that you like, a practice that you are really into spiritually and like not a lot of people know about it, like keep doing it, you know, like lean into it, trust it, practice it, and you'll understand that like you are meant to be a pioneer. And so that's something I feel like you guys might feel like misfits and like, okay, woo, I'm getting a channel message. Hold on. The reason why you feel like a misfit or you feel like people don't understand you is because they don't understand you, but that's not a bad thing, because you were meant to create a new paradigm that other people will come into and join. And then eventually we're going to look at you guys and be like, I can't believe we lived this long without this. Like think about the inventions you use every day, like the vacuum or like the refrigerator or like the toilet or like the light bulb or something like that, or the iPhone. Like people thought people who invented those things were crazy. Or like I always like to think about activists maybe in this way, maybe just because of the climate of the world. I'm thinking a lot about activism lately, and like people didn't like Martin Luther King when he was alive. Like people didn't like Rosa Parks when she was alive. People didn't like Malcolm X when he was alive. And these are some of the more prominent activists that like we've had in our lifetimes, right? And so now it's like we have Martin Luther King Day and everybody like celebrates and learns about these activists and like what they did, right, in the world to like make our world a better place. But for, like Jesus, oh my gosh, like I love Jesus, and not in like a scary evangelical way, but just in like I think he was such a badass, and I just really honor his spirit and the legacy that he left, just like I do with the Buddha. And there's something like people hated him, people killed him, okay? Think about how the millions of people around the world right now are actively practicing Christianity and are actively reading the Bible and reading Jesus's words and praying to Jesus, right? But when he was alive, he was murdered. Like people literally thought he was crazy and murdered him. And so just understand on your path, I'm not saying that you're Jesus. I'm saying that you will have people who follow you and understand what you're doing. You're going to have people who literally think you're crazy, and that's okay. Like, let yourself in your own way kind of like be sacrificed for the things that you're passionate about, because like it's your worth. If the universe or God places something on your heart, like to follow, like follow that, because you're going to be bringing other people with you, and like the changes that you're making in this world are going to be so impactful. Last but not least, if your north node is in Pisces and your south node is in Virgo, when your south node is in Virgo, in your past life, you might have been like a doctor or a nurse. You could have been like a personal trainer or a gardener, somebody who like works with like habits and routines, and a lot of the times the body, but not always, to create beauty in the world and to help people, because I do feel like Pisces and Virgo is the axis of the healer. Both placements are healers, just in different ways. But in this lifetime, you're meant to get out of your head and get into the cosmos with North Node in Pisces. Virgo's shadow side can be very cerebral, kind of like Gemini, overthinking, overanalyzing, kind of like isolating because you're overthinking and overanalyzing, and only kind of believing things if you have facts. Whereas North Node in Pisces energy knows, like, Pisces is ruled by the 12th house, which is like spirituality and religion and the unseen world. Also like drunkenness and institutions, which we can get into on another podcast. But essentially, like, Pisces is like floating between realms. And so your tendency is going to be to overthink and overanalyze. And when you do that, your cosmic homework for me right now on this pod is like, switch out of that and see how you can see the bigger picture. Like, get into nature, get into water, meditate, go to a plant medicine ceremony, like however you like to connect with the unseen world. Do that thing, because you're meant to. Pisces can also be religious too. So it's okay if you're not in like the new age spirituality, but like finding a religion that feels really supportive to you and nourishing to you can also be really powerful. It's like understanding that like your soul came here to expand spiritually. I just keep going like this because like this is what I feel like for North Node in Pisces. Your soul came to expand spiritually. So like let it, let yourself play in the things that like you don't fully understand or like that don't make sense, because that's what your soul is here to learn and experience. And there's a really beautiful richness to North Node in Pisces, because when you connect to the divine, when you abandon the things that you feel like you need to be true up here in your mind and like what you've read in books, you can like fully relax into the arms of the divine, into the arms of God, and like listen to their guidance and grounding. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of the Wild Wisdom podcast. Really enjoyed this podcast. Go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to spread this wisdom to other sisters who might need it.